welcome all. So I'm going to talk about Is there any, okay. So I'm going to start with debugging in Xcode. Okay. So how many of you do debugging on regular basis? That's clear. And how many of you like doing debugging at regular basis? Yogesh? Okay.
Job description.
Okay. So don't worry. Even I like debugging, and the fact is I did debugging during my first year of career. I was simply doing debugging. There was no new code given to me. There were a couple of senior guys. They were implementing new things, rushing because the product has to put in the market. But all the cleanup activities, all the fine-tuning work was given to me, and I was new at that time. So learning was a good. I was like very happy to learn what is debugging and on what I learned in my college days, and how I can use like all those assumptions, everything I learned out there was like thrown away. Like, ऐसा भी होता है? Is this possible? That's what happened with me, but I enjoyed it a lot. Okay, but everything, the good side has a bad side to it. Okay, so the problem with debugging is it's time consuming. As you can see, what goes to the in a final release is the output, the tip of the iceberg, and all the other things which are there, all the work you have put, efforts you have put to clean all the dirty code, all the it's not visible anywhere outside. If you maintain a log, your manager will approve, will appreciate that. Okay, this guy does a good job. But debugging is actually nobody outside your company knows what all things you have done to make it faster, unless an angry customer comes to you and says like this app doesn't work and puts a bad review. So secondly, the problem we have now, the thing is the world is changing, the timeline has changed. Earlier when I started, project manager were quite easy, okay if you say this project feature is gonna take 2 weeks, 1 week. Now they want the feature ready in like two days or 3 days. Like एक sprint में 3 feature खत्म करना है, because if you are not able to do it, like sometimes I work in a service based company. The problem was if you are not able to do it, they will say okay, you are taking too much time to work on this project, we are going to give this project to some other team. So debugging, we need to work on all this, and all the effort which you are putting to debug is actually never accounted for. Like frankly, it's not accounted what efforts you are putting to give a shiny app to the consumers. Okay, so how can we handle this? What if we avoid debugging, right? That's the good thing, right? We don't have to do debug. The good thing is don't write any code. Like that's the ultimate solution. Don't write any code. You don't have to debug anything. But that's not how the software industry works. We have to write code. We have to do. We'll make mistake. We have to learn from the mistake. We have to make sure that we don't repeat those mistakes again. So there are better tools available at our disposal. Like I'm going to talk about all these 4 tools, like how we can avoid debugging. Okay, so there is static analyzer, which is then there are runtime tools. There are assertions and enums. So when I started from this angle, like can I use enums for avoiding debugging? So it just blew my mind. Like there are a lot of things which we can do with the help of enums, and that actually help us to avoid debugging. So what is static analyzer? If you notice on the menu bar under product is a option called analyze. Okay, so what analyze does is a static analyzer for Clang. It's a Clang based analyzer. It uses the logic to check your code without actually running it. So it's a compile time feature. We can run it as when we want. What it does, it checks for all the error conditions. So it checks for logical flaws. You are using a variable without assigning values to it. You are using memory management issues. If you are especially, and yeah, the Clang static analyzer works on Objective-C based project. Why I included this? Because most of you are from Swift background, and if Objective-C, if you are using any library which is Objective-C based, because still a lot of large amount of code and the frameworks are still in Objective-C, you won't able to understand what is actually happening because it's completely alien to us. So with the help of static analyzer, at least you get a edge to it that you can understand what's actually happening, and you can put a better question on Stack Overflow and hope somebody replies to it. Okay, so the memory management flaws with ARC, there are we have reduced the issues with the memory management a lot. If you are using Objective-C code, I recommend please migrate to ARC. It reduces your headache to a great extent. But somehow, if you are still stuck with the project which is not ARC compatible, with Clang we can reduce the identify the issues with that. Dead store. So there is one more kind of error. We assign some values to variables and never use those values. We create a variables and we don't use those values. Those kind of errors can be detected with the static analysis. And also the last one is the API usage flaws. Like you API says you need to do some certain kind of a thing. Instead of float, you use int. There is you use type conversion, and you forget about that. So if you use UI code and you use divide by do a division by 2 int and the number becomes 0, you won't see that object. So you'll completely blank because 0 both will be divided in int. Output will be 0. These kind of errors actually can be identified with the help of static analyzer, so that when this error actually come to your code, you don't have to pull your hair what is actually happening. I'm putting a UI, especially I remember this case. Once what happened, we were putting we did a kind of half day we spent on one bug. We I'm simply doing a division by 2 numbers, but this output is not coming up. What's the issue? The thing was we were using, if you see, UI color requires a float input, but it won't give you compile time warning if you are using hex code 53 divided by 256 or 255. You do that will be it will work, but it will never tell you that you are actually going you are using beyond the values, that is 0 to 1. That's the range in which UI color works. So all these issues we can identify without running our code. When we start with when you start with the static analyzer, and you will see a lot of errors, and don't get panic. Start solving one by one. As you start using it, the number of errors becomes less, and there will come a time then you will have 0 errors. So how to use static analyzer? As I mentioned earlier, it will be available under product and analyze. Okay, and the output of this will be available in issue navigator. Okay, on build time tab. So if you have something like this, it will be mentioned over there. Static analyzer does not cause any compiler error, so feel free to use it. It won't break your build, and you will not be in a state that I started with a good intention, but now my code is not working. These are warnings, as we do with the most of them. You can ignore them, but if you look at them closely, you might find out some of the issues which might later turn into a completely unrelated code, and it will be difficult to debug. So all the code, what you think, okay, this code works fine, just give it a try, run a static analyzer on it once. When the next thing is, if you see under build setting, we have option over there. There are customization available. If you want to do experiment with your build and you're quite happy with that, you can just check out over there. You might find some more bugs, because this works by analyzing your code again and again with all the paths which are possible in your code. Good to explore, set it to max, get the and be upfront with the errors which are there in your code. The thing is, if you run static analysis, that does not mean that you have covered all the scenarios. There is a possibility that your error, might be some logical errors are not detected by it. So don't, if you say that my static analysis gives no warnings or no errors, my code works fine. Or if you have someone who can look at your code, do a code review, but don't completely rely on that. So possibility of false positive, because it analyzes your code at a compiled time, there is a possibility of false positive. That means something which is right may be flagged as a wrong behavior. Okay, so there is a possibility of that. You can avoid that using asserts. I'm going to talk about asserts later. But if you see any error, and because I mentioned it earlier, these are the kind of warnings. Don't, if you see anything, don't show to your, like if you're like I don't want to accept your merge request because there are like warnings coming from a static analyzer. Don't be like that guy. This can have a false positive results. Okay, so the last the reference for this is like you can go and check out 2016 top thread sanitizer and static analyzer. It covers few scenarios over there in detail. What I told you here, if you go and you might learn something new over there. So do check out. That covers our first tool to avoid debugging. The second set of tools is actually not one tool but multiple tools. What static analyzer covered was compile time check of your code. Runtime tools actually, as name suggests, they run they work with your app at the runtime. They detect the flaws during the runtime, and with that you can uncover some of the issues which you did not find in compile time or did not find during your logical. So some of how to set up compile time tool is as follow. How many of you know these screen? Okay, fine. So those who don't know, this screen is available under edit scheme setting, and that will be a laser. So if you're not done edit scheme, just do check it out. As soon as you open that, this screen will be available. So you don't have to do multiple level of thing, and you can see all the runtime checks which are available to at our disposal. I mentioned on here. Just like the static analyzer reporting the errors, the runtime errors are also mentioned in the runtime tab. So the earlier build was supposed to be come here. Anything which is compile time comes on the build time, and the runtime are the issues reported by the runtime. There's one more place if you can see this error. If you notice this pink purple icon over here, that means you have some runtime issue to look at. Okay. Yeah. So first is main thread sanitizer. So how many times you? I think now it should be a comment, but I don't make assumptions. Let's see. You make an API call on the background, and you don't see the result. the result is not visible. What's the reason for it?
You always should update your UI in method when you
Right.
when you
Yeah, but when we are writing code, at times that fails because we are in a hurry. We don't see those kind of issues are actually handled by main thread. Second one is thread sanitizer. The thread sanitizer actually help us to solve the issues with the yeah.
What are sanitizers?
Sanitizer are the tools. These all tools are called sanitizers. Just like we use hand sanitizer. Yeah. Sorry.
To remove the bugs.
Yes. Debug, right? Debug. Remove the bugs. So next we have thread sanitizer. What it does is it looks for data race cases. So data race cases is actually a scenario when same set of code or same set of variable is accessed from multiple thread, at least and also it includes at least one write operation. So like asynchronous, and the problem is if we are making asynchronous calls to write and read data from that variable, and if you are not use proper synchronization, you will see inconsistent data. There is a possibility of memory corruption, and the problem with thread sanitizer, like a thread issue with the threads, is it's very difficult to debug with the help of setting breakpoints, because by the time you set a breakpoint, you halt the thread may continue its work or it may wait for this thread to run. So these all issues we can't identify with breakpoints. Something like thread sanitizer will help us to do that. Address sanitizer helps us to identify the issue with the memory, memory corruption, heap corruption and all. I have not personally used because I migrated to Swift, so I never deal with that. But just to, if someone can help me with this, if you can share your experiences, that will be great. So the fourth one is undefined behavior sanitizer. So this also was introduced in 2017, 18 with Xcode 9. So it came with Xcode 9. So this works with Objective-C. All the errors which usually go unnoticed, like you are deallocated some object and still referencing to it, and you are trying to access a variable which is not yet set. Apart from clan, this tool can help you to solve those. Yeah, so the main thread sanitizer, this is the code sample. Very simple example. What actually it does, if you see, this is a synchronous call, and with what happens is, like, we are updating self.label text, and we are sending a text value to it. This before main thread sanitizer, this code will not give you error. What actually happens is, like, if you are very new to iOS development, you won't understand what's happening. You say I'm getting a response, but why the response is showing after some time, or there is a delay in showing the response. The correct code is when you're doing something on the background thread, the UI update should happen on the main thread. So this is how the main thread sanitizer helps us to do this. Secondly, if you are creating UI elements, you are programmatically you are creating a UI controller and adding as a child to some other view controller. Those all activities should also be done on the main thread. If you have some activity which, like, makes an API call or image download completes and then comes back to the main thread, those all calls will be detected on with the help of main thread sanitizer. Yeah, it's ready to use. That means to use main thread sanitizer, we don't need to recompile the app. For the others, we need to recompile the app to use. But main thread sanitizer is we don't require to recompile the app to start using it. The good thing is by default, without telling us, Apple has enabled this. So most probably your code already has this setting to check for main thread UI issue. Yeah, so if you want to know more about this, this is the one of the session about runtime tools. This session actually, why I'm recommending this session, this talks about all the sanitizers in one go. So if you don't have time to watch all the videos, you can just simply tip your toes, like get to know what all sanitizers are there with this talk. So if you're not watching any other talk, do watch this one. It will give you help you a lot. Yeah. So now the next one is the thread sanitizer. So this is what I explained you earlier. So again, I will tell you, data races is a cases when you have at multiple thread accessing a same variable asynchronously, and at least there's one write operation. If there are all read operations, problem doesn't come, but there are at least one write operation happens. There are chances you might have a wrong data, or you might get the thing. Okay, so one more thing is, if you're still not using GCD and dispatch framework, if you're using mutex and other thread leaks, thread sanitizer helps you to identify these kind of issues. If you like uninitialized mutex is like something like I experienced earlier. Again, we spent considerable amount of time just to know like what silly mistake we are doing, because we are debugging. So our assumption was, we are debugging multiple threads, so वो कहीं पे तो data miss हो रहा है because we have put a breakpoint. But it took us a while to understand, like no, but the basic thing is our mutex is like set to nil, it's not doing anything. So these all issues can be identified with thread sanitizer. So to avoid issues with the thread, please, if you are not still using dispatch API, start using it. It's I don't know, for some people the learning curve is high, like they find it difficult, but dispatch APIs are very easy if you get used to it. That will help you to again avoid unnecessary debugging. Yes, the same talk 2016 412 thread sanitizer. This talk is explains the issues with thread sanitizer, which helps thread sanitizer to solve. You can go check this video. It's a really good video. Like I didn't know, like I was like I covered my understanding about the thread sanitizer, but there are a few cases which I was not aware. So do check that video. Okay, now comes to limitations of sanitizer. Only supports 64-bit simulators and macOS apps. So now most of our apps, like all the projects, like all the like products which we are shipping are 64-bit compatible. But if you still have to support earlier 32-bit code base, that won't help you. But like 80-20 ka rules समझ के, this will work for the majority of cases. If you are some like lucky one who is working on the iOS, watchOS, this is not present over there. So that's and you cannot use it on device. It works only on simulator. So the recommendation is to use in your test cases when you use UI unit test cases. Keep it enabled. It might detect some of the issues over there. One more reason to I'm suggesting to use test case is like it has a performance impact. It's trying to understand the behavior of 3-4 threads at the same time. So there is performance. The memory uses goes up to 5 to 10. This is like mentioned in Apple's documentation. Again, CPU slow down 2 to 20%. So if you have like nightly build, दे दो, that will take care of it. अपना करके खुद नहीं करके जाओगे तो it will take more time. So the idea is to reduce your time debugging, not to increase it. So put it on like your unit test cases build. It will help you to solve the issues. Okay. So address sanitizer is something I will recommend. Maybe I will revisit and come to it. I tried many times to understand it, but I won't be a person to tell you okay use this. But go and check this out. There is a 2015 session 413 which helps us to understand it. Anyways, if you're using ARC, which should not be a problem, and mostly the memory issues are coming from Objective-C are covered over here. For the majority of the problem which we do on day-to-day basis, address sanitizer is not required. Maybe you can revisit this, someone else can take this up and who has worked on it, help us understand. There is one, I forgot to add a note over here. There is one session by the author of PDF SDK, Peter. PS PDF is so he has one talk on about this. I'll try to find out the link and share it across with you guys. But I'm not doing any fancy thing with my memory management activities. So I'm not a person to like. Yeah, go ahead.
Is this required for Swift? For
No.
Not at all.
No.
Unless I use unsafe memory pointer.
Yes, unsafe memory pointers के साथ required है. Unless like majority of the cases this is not required. So I try to understand it. For me it was quite difficult to understand, and I did not see return on investment. Like I put a lot of time to understand it, but maybe I will see to it I understand and maybe present it next time. There's one more thing which Apple introduced with Xcode 9, apart from the main thread sanitizer, was the undefined behavior sanitizer. The common issues, right? These all issues can be identified with undefined behavior sanitizer. I would, instead of me explaining you, it's quite detailed talk. 404 2017 talk is very detailed, goes into explaining the undefined behavior, because that's the time then they introduce this sanitizer. So if you happen to see like again the same video which I mentioned earlier, like this is like second time I'm mentioning it, please do watch it. This is the summary of all these talks we had done. Main thread sanitizer works with both. It does not require recompilation. Undefined behavior, because Swift takes care of all the issues and strongly typed. So undefined behavior sanitizer does not work with Swift. But if you are still those people like who are still required to work majburi Objective-C, so have this. Okay, do check this link. It helps you to understand with example what all is present in each of them, all the 4 sanitizers which are there. Build setting options are available for address sanitizer and undefined sanitizer. You can check and explore if your code anywhere working on having any issue with runtime with respect to address and yes. Assertions. Okay, so before preparing for this app, let me put this confession. I was like, okay, only during unit test, not in the. But assertions are good. There's a there's a checklist. We can use assertions to reduce the number of errors which we require, because we validate. The one step is when we debug, what we do is we actually go and check if the variable at a current execution point has a valid value or not. Why to manually do it when we can automate it? Assertions are great. So these are 2 which I think most of us must be familiar. We assert some values, and the uska ulta is assert failure. Okay, we can have a custom string to identify where the problem is. You can have a description. Please do this. Please do that. Good thing about assertion is it does not go in the production app. It does not go in a release build. Okay, so what we can do is we can have as many assertions as we want in debug mode. Put them to validate your code, outsource it, or like automate the task of validating the state in which app requires to be is valid or not. It will crash your app for sure. But it's good to crash your app with all the assertions. It's good to crash your app and know where exactly the problem has started off. Then to go and back in a completely unstable state and backtrace. Oh, this could be the one of the reason for the assertion. So feel free to use it. Okay, not an issue. इसका बड़ा भाई है preconditions. Okay, preconditions go to the production app also. Okay, so if you have something which is very critical and you don't want, like Dream 11 से कौन है? Yeah, so you don't want people to like do something on your app जो योगेश ने बताया था last time. So you can use preconditions there. And again, it will also crash your app, but you can actually understand what's actually happening with the crashes than completely unrelated code, and which is like difficult to debug. And if you're worried why to introduce a production app में crashes explicitly like Danish के, Apple uses preconditions. So Paul Hudson has given one talk on this. The number what he quote was 246 times. Assertions are already used. So the issues in Swift such as out of bound, checking null, and all those issues which we see are already present. If Apple ships their product with preconditions, we should do. It's okay to crash our app sometimes. Yeah.
What if I want to close my app? There is an API, or should I just crash it?
This guy.
Sometimes I want the functionality that pressing something makes it close the app.
That's a wrong philosophy. But you can do it using abort.
Abort is better, but this guy also does the same thing. If you notice, if you are using subclass of UI view controller, and if you don't specify the default initializers, it will crash. So that crash comes from Federal. Again, nil cell in case of in case of UI table view cell, cell for a row index path. If you don't get a cell, the app crashes. That comes from Twitter, because it makes sense to actually use that this tool, because if you don't have data, if you don't have cell, you can't show table view. Again, one more example is nif file. Storyboard se nif file nahi aata. That example also works with Twitter. You don't have valid thing with you to proceed further. Twitter. Yeah. Sure. So last point is like assert, use it everywhere. Every function put asserts, validate them and go further. It will reduce your debugging time to great extent. Preconditions, use preconditions if you want to make sure that a state needs to be maintained. You want to enforce that even in the production apps. And Feta is the one we should not crash the app. That I also believe the same philosophy, but use it wisely. Like, that's what I can tell you. Yeah. So far we talk a lot about like what we can do and what all we have, and now is this I think actually like we are not. So actually this is very true. I mean, when we are the one who put bug in the code, right? So if we complain about debugging and all, so that's the one we are at the fault for writing wrong code. We should write better code. There are better practice available. One of the method is enums. I mean, like we can use them anywhere. You just start thinking, can I use instead of structure? So like we started with class. From there we come to structure. From structure we come to enums. Enums are as in the Swift. They are very powerful. We can do a lot of things with enums. We can use them for finite states. What I mean by finite states is if you have some and output is limited to like known states, then go for it. And secondly, use for string constant. So in finite state, I'm going to explain you few cases. So state management, network APIs, and view control navigation. So these are all finite state in your app. If you are dealing with the flow and there are set rules are there, after this screen, the next screen should come. The number of available options, like in this room, this is the exit, that is the exit. There is no other exit on this. So we have finite cases. We can use pool like we used to do earlier, but it's not we can use it, but the problem is if I want to say like I want to use this door, is this door open? And the condition is if we need to have one door open, then we need to also check that door is not open. Again, other way from if this door is open, we need to check this door is not open. It's like we have to check two conditions. I have this example, Apple Music membership. Like there are three cases. So what usually people do is like is student true false, is individual true false, or is family true false. So if one is true and both of them are false, this is a bad practice. What we can do is use enum over there. Your output will be defined in a defined state. It will be in a one state. You will say okay, if student, that means by definition it won't be individual and it won't be a family account. Also, one more benefit we get, bool is a binary, either true or false. It does not scale with the number of cases we have in the code, but enums for finite states, they can scale to like large number of cases.
Also, here you are creating three variables, but in enum you are only creating one variable.
Yes, this
you are
one
saving on memory.
Memory also. You're saving on memory and you're saving on the code which you need to write. The next thing is API calls, if you see, they are also finite. You have set number of cases I need to support. And one more thing is we get associated types also. So with help of that, we can actually write a good APIs. API interface is quite standard, like it's quite well defined unless you want to add. Now the thing is, if you need to add one more case over here, and wherever your users switch case to handle the this enum, you will get a compile time error that you have not handled this case, one case. So that check already like compiler provides to you that you have not defined the variable. So if the next thing is now the API enum its protocol. This is what I use in my code, and this with the help of this protocol, when if you see like all the parent whatever I require for the thing, I put it there in gives it API. Now what actually happens is enums can support two protocols. So what we can do is with help of this you can write all the case I just mentioned about get URL request. What you can do this for all the variables. So if for a particular web service you have not mentioned the HTTP request or response, it will give you a compile time error. So you don't have to go and debug and check, oh I'm putting a post over here, not get, because the compiler will tell you if you are using this new method added to your code, it will ask you questions, what's the method HTTP method to use. If base URL path, this is like all common things I mentioned. So that way you can use success code क्या supported है, and we can have multiple there. Yeah.
Can I have default values in enums cases?
Yes, we can use default.
But that's not advisable because that again won't throw that compiler error once you add one switch.
Yes,
so that's
yes.
not advisable.
Yes,
Don't do that.
it can have enum can have default values, but to get the advantage what we want is don't use that. Like so compile time error is the one check like we have forgotten to mention for this
But in
piece.
Swift 5 that is called.
Compulsory.
Suppose you add one more enum and it won't go in default. It will give you an error that this case is missing.
So that is already present. Like if this case is missing.
No, but if you put default, it won't give you the error
Okay.
in current condition.
Okay.
In Swift 5
Okay.
there is an
So default plus the new case which we have.
error.
Okay, that's so interesting. Good. Yeah. Same goes with the navigation. You have like case to handle, and you can specify which case to like how to proceed further. String constants. They are constants. They are finite values. Okay, and there is a possibility you end up doing some typo and spending half an hour to at least 2 hours to do that. Use enums over there. This is the simplest one. You can actually have like chaining of enums to do that. That's possible. Like raw value हो जाता है. With the extensions, what we can do is we can write more variables to it and handle it. So enum everywhere. So to recap, firstly we use static analyzer and understand what errors you have missed out in your logic. Runtime tools, we use them for debug and test configuration. Asserts, use them. Enums, reduce number of false cases you need to handle because compiler will help you in that. Do we have time for this? Okay, so this is like what I understood, like what my thing is, but we are short on time, but I want to know what you guys are like using to avoid debugging. I don't want to be like this is like my version and to do that something which you have to something, or we can take this afterward also. Maybe if you are short on time.
I think let's do it.
Yeah,
We have
but please share your ideas to do like like how do you avoid debugging? Thank you.